There are moments in life that arrive quietly, without fanfare, but somehow manage to alter the landscape of our hearts forever. My name is Linda Carter, and the story I am about to share begins on a crisp autumn afternoon, an afternoon that felt ordinary enough, until a single phone call began to unravel years of silence, grief, and secrets I never knew my family carried. But before we begin, if you have ever lived through a moment that forced you to confront memories you thought you had buried or healed you in ways you never expected, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And, of course, if you enjoy meaningful, heartfelt stories like this one, do not forget to subscribe so you can follow along as everything unfolds. Now, let me take you back. It had been 3 years since my husband, Michael Carter, passed away. 3 years since the world dimmed just a little. 3 years of waking up beside an empty half of the bed. 3 years of trying to accept that the man I loved since I was 22 was no longer walking through the front door with that familiar smile and the scent of pine wood that always lingered on his jacket. Grief is a strange companion. It dulls but never fully disappears. It changes shape and waits in quiet corners of your life, ready to surface again when you least expect it. Our son, Jacob, had taken his father's death especially hard. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. He carried his grief the way Michael used to carry heavy burdens, silently, inwardly, with his shoulders slightly hunched as if to protect the world rather than himself. Which is why, when Jacob called me one Thursday morning and said, "Mom, I want to have you over for dinner tomorrow. I have something important to tell you," my entire body tightened with a mixture of worry and hope. He rarely invited me anywhere these days. He rarely invited anyone anywhere. This meant something. But I could never have imagined what that something was. The following evening, I drove to Jacob's house just as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting warm streaks of gold and burnt orange across the sky. His home stood at the end of a quiet suburban street lined with tall maple trees that had begun shedding their autumn leaves. The driveway was clean, the porch light glowed softly, and for a moment, everything looked peaceful, almost deceptively so. I knocked gently on the front door. Jacob opened it immediately, as if he had been waiting behind it. "Mom," he said, smiling in a way I had not seen in years. He wrapped his arms around me, and for a few seconds, I felt the embrace of both my son and the ghost of the man who shaped him. The inside of the house was warm. Candles flickered softly along the dining table. A gentle instrumental track played in the background. The air smelled faintly of rosemary and garlic. Jacob had cooked something himself, which was unusual. He had never been the culinary type. But then I saw it. And the world shifted beneath my feet. At the far end of the dining table sat a place setting. A full, formal place setting. A plate. Silverware. A folded linen napkin. A wineglass filled with the deep red shade of Michael's favorite Cabernet. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. And before I could stop myself, my hand reached for the back of a nearby chair just to steady my legs. "Jacob," I whispered, barely able to speak. Why did you set a place for your father?" Jacob's expression shifted in a way I could not immediately read. It was tender, but also heavy, like he was carrying something fragile inside him. "I will explain everything, Mom," he said. "But please, sit down. Dinner is almost ready." Reluctantly, I walked toward the table and sat. And suddenly the memories crashed over me. Michael used to sit at the head of the table. He would lean back slightly in his chair, raise his glass, and say every night without fail, "To another day we managed to love each other well." He believed that shared meals were sacred. I could almost hear his voice echoing through the room. Tears stung my eyes. The place setting felt like touching a wound that had never truly healed. When Jacob returned from the kitchen with steaming dishes, he looked older somehow. More worn. More resolved. He set the plates in front of us, took a slow breath, and said, "Mom, tonight I want to tell you something Dad shared with me during his last days. Something I have carried alone for too long." My heart quickened. Michael had kept many things from me during his final months, not out of deceit, but out of love. He never wanted me to see how much he suffered. "What did he tell you?" I asked. Jacob's eyes shifted toward the empty chair. "He asked me to set a place for him at the table," Jacob said quietly. He told me to keep doing it for as long as it took.
I blinked in confusion.
For as long as it took for what, Jacob? Jacob swallowed hard. There is more to it, Mom. But I need you to hear everything in order. I nodded, though uncertainty churned in my stomach. We started eating, though neither of us tasted much. Every time I glanced at the empty chair, a pang of grief struck through my chest like an old familiar blade. Halfway through the meal, Jacob looked directly at me and said, "Dad told me that the chair represents more than memory. He said it represented something he needed from both of us."
A shiver ran through me.
What could he possibly have needed after he was gone? I asked. Jacob hesitated. Then he said, "He told me that even when he was no longer physically here, love still sits with us." That was only the first part. Tears blurred my vision instantly.
I pressed my fingers to my lips.
God, I missed him. But then Jacob continued, and his next words unsettled me even more. He said the real reason would reveal itself when the time was right. What reason? I whispered. I did not know, Jacob replied. Not until recently. He stood up suddenly and walked to a small cabinet near the living room. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folded letter aged, yellow around the edges, handled many times. He returned to the table and placed it gently beside my plate.
My breath hitched.
The handwriting on the envelope belonged to Michael.
Jakob, what is this?
I asked. He wrote this for you, Jacob said. But he asked me not to give it to you until the moment the empty chair finally made sense to me. My chest tightened painfully. Why did it take you 3 years to understand? Because, Jacob said softly, I only understood it last month.
My pulse raced.
What happened last month, Jacob? He drew in a shaky breath. I became a father.
The words struck me like a gentle, life-altering blow. My hands flew to my mouth.
What? Jacob, why did you not tell me sooner? Where is the baby's mother? How? Jacob lifted a hand. I did not tell you because I was scared. But Dad told me that when I understood what it meant to love someone so deeply that your life would never be the same, the empty chair would finally have its purpose. My heart crumbled and rebuilt itself in a single moment. He continued. When I held my daughter for the first time, something in me broke open. Something Dad had been waiting for me to understand.
Jakob's voice cracked.
Dad wanted us to set a place for him so we would remember that love does not end. It is past. It is taught. It is lived. And he wanted me to learn how to become the kind of father he was to me. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I reached across the table and took his hand. Oh, Jacob. But he was not done. There is something else, Mom. Something Dad wanted you to know specifically. And it is in that letter. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Michael's handwriting, still steady, still familiar, covered the page. I pressed my palm against the paper, feeling his presence as though he were standing behind me. And then I began to read.
My dearest Linda.
It began. If I could have heard his voice reading it aloud, I would have. You were the love of my life, and you still are as you read this. I know leaving you will be the hardest thing you ever endure, and I am sorry that I cannot spare you that pain. But I want you to know that I never truly left. The empty chair is not a reminder of absence, it is a reminder of presence. My love for you has not ended. It has simply changed form.
My vision blurred.
I kept reading. I asked Jacob to keep this ritual alive because grief sometimes tricks us into thinking love has died. But it has not. I needed him to see it. I needed you to feel it. And one day, when he becomes a father, you will both understand the fullness of what love continues to give long after we are gone. I sobbed openly now. Jacob came to my side and rested a hand on my shoulder. I read the final paragraph through trembling breaths. When the day comes that Jacob understands my request, he will be ready to begin the next chapter of his life. And when you read this letter, you will know that you have permission to live again, to smile again, to love the world again, because my love is still at your table, waiting to walk with you into whatever comes next. The letter fell from my fingers as I broke. Every piece of grief I had ever held inside me cracked open and poured out. Every memory,
Every laughter.
every tear, every night spent longing for Michael's presence.
Jacob embraced me and cried with me.
In that moment, 3 years of silence, distance, and unspoken pain finally dissolved. The empty chair was no longer empty. It was full, overflowing with meaning, memory, and endless love. When we finally collected ourselves, Jacob said softly, "Mom, there is someone I want you to meet." He led me to the living room. There, in a small bassinet, slept the most beautiful baby girl I had ever seen. Her hair dark and soft like Jacob's. Her tiny fists curled up beside her cheeks. Her breaths gentle and rhythmic. My granddaughter.
My knees weakened. Jacob placed a hand on my back.
"I named her Michaela," he said, "after Dad. Because I want her to grow up knowing the kind of love he gave us." My heart swelled with a warmth I had not felt in years.
He knelt beside the bassinet and touched the back of Michaela's tiny hand. Tears fell freely. "Hello, sweet girl," I whispered.
"Your grandpa would have adored you." In that instant, everything became clear. Michael had not asked us to set a place for him to make us hold on to grief. He asked us to set a place so love would never leave the table. So that when the next generation arrived, she would grow up knowing she was entering a family built on devotion, compassion, and connection. A family where love outlived loss. Where memories became blessings rather than burdens. That night, before I left Jacob's house, I returned once more to the empty chair. I placed my hand on the back of it and closed my eyes. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt peace. Warm. Soft.
Like a gentle hand resting on my shoulder.
Michael had never truly left. He had simply changed the way he stayed. The tradition continued. Every Friday night, Jacob and I shared dinner. And one evening, little Michaela sat on my lap, babbling happily as she reached toward the empty chair.
Jacob laughed.
"She keeps doing that," he said. "I think she feels something there." I smiled, tears filling my eyes not from sadness, but from overwhelming gratitude. "Maybe she does," I whispered. "Maybe she felt the love that had shaped us all. Maybe she felt the presence of her grandfather watching over her. Or maybe love simply knows how to make itself seen by those who need it most." Either way, we kept the chair. Not because it represented loss, but because it represented every bit of love that continued to guide us forward. If this story touched you in any way, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever received a message from someone you loved even after they were gone? Your experiences matter, and I would love to read them. If you enjoy heartfelt, healing stories like this, do not forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another chapter. Thank you for being here. And remember,
love never truly leaves the table.